Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Power Half Hour Unstoppable Business Owner. And I'm your host this evening, Dorothy Odell. There's just some housekeeping things we have to get out of the way first, and that is our sponsors for tonight's show, which is the Unstoppable Camaraderie 24-hour fundraiser. We did complete that. However, there is still a lot of funds that need to be raised. I don't know. Excuse me, if you had caught any of that, but you can definitely go to our YouTube channel at Unstoppable Overcomers and pick up some of the episodes that were on there where you saw the impact of what PTSD and suicidal ideations really do to our men and women in uniform. So it was a hugely impactful event, but we still need to raise more funds. So you can go to tinyurl.com/hope for vets to donate. And we do believe that every dollar counts. So if, a dollar is all you have, we would greatly appreciate that. And for those of you that can, afford more, we would greatly appreciate that as well. So again, that was tinyurl.com/hope for vets to donate. As well as we have Unstoppable Overcomers Secrets in Depth. Secrets in Depth is by Dr. Joseph Duture. This book is filled with rich and detailed information on this gripping factual thriller. I don't know why I can't talk tonight. That shows the depths of darkness acquired after 3 decades of service. So get your copy today on either Barnes & Noble or Amazon. With that, I'm going to bring to the stage our guest, Paul. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Hello, Dorothy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
Absolutely. Or should I say aloha? Oh, Paul is originally from Hawaii. So, that's one of the fun facts. And so tell us a little bit more about yourself, though, Paul.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Hawaii. I grew up with my grandparents, and I was very academically gifted. Since I was about 12, I had a goal of becoming a neurosurgeon. That was what I wanted to do. And for me, I started going to college when I was 16 to pursue it. And then a year later, my grandparents passed away, and my dad passed away as well. And my mom nearly passed away as well due to medical issues. And that was basically when, as I like to call it, my life kind of started. I supported my family financially in Hawaii since I was 16 years old. I've been in the finance industry for the past 6 years, and I've helped people eliminate debt, build generational wealth without risk, educate people. And at the start of this year, I decided to leave the corporate world and become an entrepreneur. And I moved from Hawaii to Florida for multiple reasons, but the main reason was I joined the 10X mentor program with Grant Cardone, and he was in Florida, so it made sense. And some of the closest people in my life also lived in Florida, so that worked out. And I always tell people I left Hawaii to change the world. I felt like I wanted to do massive things, and I was kind of stuck on a small little place where a lot of people don't really have a limitless mindset. It's kind of your life goes how your lineage kind of went. If you have like a family that did X or Y, you kind of tend to follow in the footsteps. A lot of people never leave. And I just knew that when I decided that I wanted to stop accepting my reality and chase my potential, that was one of the sacrifices that I needed to make. So I've been just very grateful to be here and own my time.
Wow. I'm such a young guy, young age, and, so full of wisdom. And so we appreciate you being here this evening. And, losing a lot of your family at such a young age, that has got to have impacted you in some way as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was really interesting because I think for a lot of people, when you're going through loss, you don't really understand it, and I think that's the ultimate challenge with life, right? Is if you're in school or any other thing, generally you're able to kind of study before you get the test. Well, life kind of will throw you the test first, and then if you're fortunate to make it through, then you learn the lesson later. And I think for me, I spent a lot of time playing, I guess you could say, a victim, where it was a constantly bad thing after bad thing, and I was just like, oh, why is this happening to me? And
Mm.
for the past 3 years, I've really dealt with a lot of the mental health things that I went through, having to support my family so young, losing all my family member, or a lot of them. And I really learned that everything in life happens for you instead of to you. And once really shifted to that mindset and understanding that everything is a lesson, I like to say that everyone and everything that you meet or experience is either a lesson or a blessing. And I think that for me, while a lot of people look at it as, oh, it's so tragic, I think that's the history of life, right? Is it takes tragedy in order to experience triumph. And in order for people to really learn and transform their life, they have to experience that. And that's definitely what it was for me.
Absolutely, absolutely. I get it as somebody who has experienced a lot of chaos and a lot of
Yeah,
loss. Prior to
right.
the, well, I'm 46 now, but I mean, I'm way older than you are. I know, but experiencing loss, and it does something to you.
Yeah.
And having to take care of people financially at such a young age. So kudos to you, for finding your way and not letting that bury you, because I'm sure that it could have at one point. So that definitely strong suit there. So I commend you for that. So I have to say, because I've always wanted to be to Hawaii, it has to be probably one of the most beautiful islands in the world, I'm sure.
It's so funny because I don't think I really appreciated it, and this is probably another gem dropper, is that you don't appreciate things until you're about to leave. And I spent my pretty much entire life there, and I wasn't really a beach person, or I didn't really go out much, so I never really experienced like the actual beauty of the island for most of the time there. And what was so fascinating to me, because before I moved to Florida currently, I was there from March to December of last year, and being gone so long, Florida's like flat, so there's no mountains or anything. And when I got home, I was like, oh, I didn't realize how much I would miss seeing the mountains. But I always tell people that home's not necessarily a physical location. For me, it's about the people and um, experiences there. And I love being here, and Hawaii's always gonna, I guess, be home, right? You can
Mhm.
never, you can never forget where you come from. But it I'm definitely at a point where I'm I wanted more out of what it offered, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like it's a
Absolutely.
very limited experience. Like, you can see the entire island in a day, just to give you an idea how small it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, my husband doesn't know that yet, but I've given us our 5 years before we get our fifth year anniversary. So we're celebrating our 3 years next Wednesday. So
It's
I
awesome.
have 2 more years left before I have to make that dream a reality, which I will. It's on my vision board. Um, so for sure. What's it like studying with Grant Cardone? Because I'm sure that has got to be one of the most, precious things ever, that somebody could go through. So what's been your experience with that?
So it was really interesting, actually, because I would say investing in 10x was probably the most impulsive decision that I've ever made. I'm an analytical person, henceforth probably why I blend so well in the finance world. But I I'm normally someone that thinks a lot, like overthinking. And I think one of the biggest things that I learned from Grant Cardone is that so many people waste so much of their time thinking and being in their own head instead of doing. And it's, I would say one of the greatest things for me is that even though I'm only 25, I've spent probably, I want to say 90+% of my life around people who are either at least twice my age or older. And it's so interesting to learn from people who are older than you and learn from their experiences so you don't make the same mistakes, but also keep in touch with modern things, if that makes sense. Because I it's really interesting when I'm communicating with the older demographic, a lot of them just get lost in the whole social media thing. But it's crazy that Grant Cardone's probably like one of the greatest marketers and social media people in the world, and he's like 65.
Mm-hmm.
So that was that's been like what some of the greatest things is that he's transformed my entire mindset. And everyone thinks that this whole 10x thing is about like income and like, but it's really just about multiplying yourself, like multiplying the value that you give people, multiplying the 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 goals that you have. It's really just about expanding and really living a limitless lifestyle. And my definition for 10x is just infinite possibilities. When I guest on these podcasts or shows, everyone always asks me like, what is your destination? Because I'm so young and everyone tells me that I'm ahead of the game. And I was telling them, I don't really think I have a destination, because the the game of life is all about having regardless of whether you're at the bottom of the income structure, at the very, very top, everybody's going to have problems. So I think that one of the most powerful quotes that he shared is that if you change the quality of your problems, you'll change the quality of your life. And I just remember from where I was at even just a year ago to where I'm at now, the type of problems that I had were that I didn't really have a lot of freedom. And now it's just like I have the freedom to do anything, and the new problem that I have is like staying organized with all these events and everything going on. Because it's like he teaches you to just commit and then you figure it out later. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the thinking, because it can get you in trouble, but yeah, he's an incredible person. And I actually met my mentor through Grant Cardone, so 10x has completely changed my life for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. So what three things would you say you've had to overcome to get to where you're at today in life and in business?
I would say the three things that I've had to overcome to get to where I'm at, number one is probably my mindset. I think when you're so used to being an employee, and I think that so many especially in the US, I would say we're trained to be an employee. You go to school, you go to college, like you work for other people, and really overcoming that mindset shift. Because where I had a really hard time in the beginning was I tried to do both the 9 to 5 and the entrepreneur thing, but it was just really hard because it's conflicting, completely opposite lifestyles. It's been very interesting this past year because my social circle has completely transformed, just because a lot of people, when you're trying to grow and become like a limitless person, a lot of people unfortunately have placed limits on themselves. And I think that for me, just accepting that my mindset is to learn something new every day and to impact as many people as possible. And I lean into that every single day, especially when things get hard, and I'll make whatever sacrifices or things that I have to make. And I just live with the consequences. So that's number one. Number two, I would say, is definitely pride. I was very humbled, I would say, by having to work 20-hour days for 2 years straight. But I think taking it a step further, so many people the most difficult thing is to ask for help. I think for anybody who's a high performer or anyone who was maybe raised in like an old school mentality, kind of like how I was, it's really hard to ask for help. And one of the most powerful lessons that I learned is that if you don't ask, the answer is always no. But
Exactly.
if you ask, you're giving people the opportunity to help you, and that you're talking. I've actually overcome it a lot on this platform because I was very new to LinkedIn. I would say I've really only been on it for the past 3 months, but I made incredible connections. I've actually launched my speaking career pretty much through LinkedIn, and it all started because I made a post asking my network for help for a digital stage to connect with someone and to launch it. And I think that one of the things that I'm learning is that there's so much power in being vulnerable and like kind of laying that down. I think so many people think that, especially as a male, you have to be like this alpha person who's like super strong. But I would go as far to say as being vulnerable and authentic with people and just having the courage to ask for help when nobody else is doing it probably makes you a lot stronger than you think, because just think about how many people, if you're not asking for help, you're limiting not only yourself, but other people that you could be impacting. And I would say that was the third thing for me to learn was I used to always say that I was selfless, but what I had to learn was that you have to be selfish first to become selfless. And one of the things that has really helped me a lot is understanding that it's not about me, but it's about my impact. And social media for me has been proof of it, just because I absolutely did not want to come to social media. I think I had probably the same interpretation that a lot of like older mature people do, is that there's a lot of nonsense going on here. People waste a lot of time. There's a lot of misinformation that's spread. And I used to always complain about that. And then one of my mentors told me, well, you can complain or you can go out there and go do something. And that's why I've decided to get known. And I just want to help as many people as possible, regardless of, what people criticize about me or what I'm doing or anything like that. It's not about me anymore. It's just about my impact. And really coming to peace with that for me was a huge step, because it was kind of like a huge burden lifted off my shoulders, if you will. I think so many times people are concerned about what other people think, and I normally really wasn't growing up, because I was always an outlier in everything that I did. I mean, I wanted to be a neurosurgeon in a state where nobody knew what a neurosurgeon was. But
Right.
Yeah, those are the three things I would say is definitely removing myself and just focusing on my impact would probably be the biggest thing that I would tell people.
Wow, that's awesome. And so what three things do you help your clients overcome?
So I think if you asked me this question a month or two ago, I would have said that it's what my tagline is, right? I help people build generational wealth without risk. But as I've met with more people and I've had conversations, just not even like business atmosphere, just random conversations when out and about, I think the biggest thing that I do is I help people get financial clarity. And it's so interesting because if you ask somebody some of the basic questions that I'll ask people, right? Like, what do you want? It's a simple question, right? Like, what do you want financially for your life? Have you thought about what that looks like? A lot of people can't answer that question. Or I'll ask people like, when do you want to retire? There's such a lack of clarity. And I think on top of many other things, this is a big issue that a lot of people have with their financial situation is, one, they don't know where they're at. They don't know where they want to go. And for a lot of people, this is a real urgent time because of everything that they're seeing happen right now with the stock market crashing. A lot of people are losing their retirements in the market. Inflation's rising everything up, but people aren't able to upkeep with their salary increasing to offset with inflation. So people are like getting credit cards, loans, and I would say that's the first thing. It's like figure out where you're at, where you want to go, and then let's help you get there. The second thing that I do is I'd say really help people secure their financial future. When I talk to a lot of people about financial freedom, it almost becomes kind of like a scam conversation for a lot of people, just because so many people have tied financial freedom to network marketing or online businesses. Like a lot of these ventures where it's really about owning your time, but yet it's so hard to make money in that business. But really showing people that regardless of what you're doing, and I think for me this was probably the biggest thing, is that I would meet a lot of people who loved what they did. Like they didn't care about the money, but the money just wouldn't work. And I think that while it's true that you have to love what you do, at the end of the day, you need to make sure that you're making enough money uh to live a life, right? Instead of just getting by. And I think for me, that was a huge motivator to do what I do, because there's there's just such a lack of financial uh, education and correct information. So I'd say that's the second thing, and the third thing would be just educating people on finance. I always like to tell people I'm not really I'm not a salesperson. I'm an educator, and Grant Cardone would argue with me because he says everybody's a salesperson, right? But
Mhm.
for me, it's really about just giving people the correct information and allowing them to make the decision for themselves. I think that we can all agree, if you're watching this, that not only in the finance industry, but in every industry, there's so much misinformation. There's a lot of people who don't have the best interests, the uh, customer's best interests at heart, and just educating people and being empathetic. And I think for me, that empathy part is something that really separates me from a lot of people in the finance world, just because of my experience and having to actually do it. Like it's really interesting when I meet with a lot of my clients, because they'll throw out all these objections to me, and I almost kind of like predict them, because those are all the same things that I started when I first started. I was afraid somebody would take advantage of me with investing. I didn't know anything and I was skeptical. So a lot of things that people are experiencing to me, I completely understand, not only just saying that, but because I actually felt that way as well.
Right. Right. Totally understand that. So, since you're in the finance industry right now and with the pandemic, hopefully behind us, but also with one of the biggest recessions coming up, or some
Yeah.
people say we're already in it. Some people say, oh, this is just the tipping point. What advice do you give your clients when they start freaking out and being uncertain about the financial future?
Well, what I can say is that one of the things that I've been learning about not just finance, but the world in general, is that people have such a hard time with change. And one of the things that I always talk to people about is that it's so interesting that as the world's evolving and it's changed so much, I mean, in the past 10 years, let alone if you even think about like 100 or anything past that,
Mhm.
yet people are using the same financial strategies that are being passed down. People are still putting their money in the banks. People are still investing in the stock market. And what's really interesting to me is that a lot of people are sold kind of projections versus reality. And what's really interesting with what's happening right now is that a lot of people are concerned because they were sold this idea of, oh, well, the market's been performing so well that it probably will. And because most people really know very little about finance, if anything, anybody who knows a sliver of something, to them is going to be considered an expert. And what I always tell people is that, because with investing in the stock market, you're taking a risk. You're basically putting your financial future, or as I call it, the financial yo-yo game. I always ask people, what's important to you? How much time do you want to waste where you're constantly in this fluctuation? I think the biggest thing that made me shift from my 4 years in banking to what I'm currently doing now is I remember at the start of COVID in 2020, where I lived in Hawaii, it was a very older demographic. So there was a lot of people who were probably like due to retire, honestly, like 60s, 70s, who were still working.
Right.
And I remember a lot of them just coming in because everybody was concerned about COVID and they would try to retire. And they ended up not being able to because they lost over half their portfolio in the market. And I just remember seeing such a lack of disregard. So it's really about sharing strategies with people that can help you build wealth without risk, that don't, maybe they don't offer you as high of an upside as like the stock market, like just being transparent,
Mhm.
but it's able to protect your downside, which I think if you ask those people who have lost a ton of money in their retirement and they're probably going to retire in the next 5, 10 years, this is information that they probably would say, oh, I would have loved to know about, because it could have completely changed their life.
Mhm. Absolutely. So you say you help people invest in things that they're not going to lose their shirt on, sort of paraphrasing, so to speak. So
Yeah.
what are some of the things that you help your clients invest in?
Well, I think that one of the most interesting things that I've noticed as a financial asset is how much life insurance is involved. It's so interesting when I have a conversation with people about they think that life insurance is death insurance, yet it's evolved so much where it has more. And I wrote a post about it too that was very informative for a lot of people, but it it has more benefits to you when you're living than when you pass away. And I see a lot of people who have life insurance and they they don't have a modern portion, yet things happen to them and their coverage, if they would have got a modern version, it would have helped them. And a lot of people are turning to GoFundMe right now. This is a was a huge motivator for me when I first started, before I really got clear on my purpose and what I wanted to do. I used to go on GoFundMe every single day, and under just cancer alone, there were over 500,000 people, and the average ask that people were wanting was $100,000. And it was interesting because I actually reached out to one of the people and I asked her if she had, this new form of life insurance, and she didn't even know it. It did, and she was able to get the money that they needed, and it changed everything for them. So I think that it's I know it's hard for a lot of people to kind of grasp, just because this is something that's completely brand new to you. You were told different things, but the world's also changed so much. Maybe you didn't need to look at using it for things like retirement back then because there were pensions,
Hmm.
and that basically guaranteed people income for life. Whereas now a lot of people are relying on their 401ks and IRAs that are so volatile now in the market. It's really just about giving people options, honestly. Like, I'm not here to say that this is the best strategy or X is better, but
Mhm.
it's just about giving people options. And I think that when you look at the overall picture, that most people right now can't afford to weather the downside of the stock market, this would be
Mhm.
valuable information for them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Paul. This half hour has gone quickly.
Yeah.
Definitely a wealth of knowledge. This man is, so young, but so full of knowledge and wisdom. And I'm sure you've heard over time, I wish I would have known this, when I was your age. So kudos to you for figuring it out at a young age. And thank you to our guests for listening in. And any last words you want to leave our guests with before we wrap this up, Paul?
Yeah, I want to share a couple quotes with people, especially if you're an entrepreneur, that really helped me a ton in my journey. And one of my mentors, Danelle Delgado, she shared this quote with me and it completely transformed my life. And she said, be more afraid of being nothing than being something. I think so many times people worry about, oh, what if this idea works? What if? But ask yourself, what if it doesn't? What if you're in a position where you just do nothing? and your entire life passes you by. And then the second one, this was been the one that it's a quote that I made that's completely transformed, is that when every single time that the world told me no, I told myself yes. And I think that for a lot of people, you're going to have to do that if you want to make it as an entrepreneur. You're going to have to be your own cheerleader. You're going to have to support yourself. And yeah.
Right. We do have a question here in the audience. What are you offering? Universal life, critical illness?
Karen, thank you so much for the question. It's one of the options, but before I do anything, I like to meet with people, gather information, just because there's a ton of options in the finance world, and I don't give advice before meeting people and getting all my questions answered, if that makes sense. I don't want to do a disservice to you.
Right. Totally got that. All right. So if you would like more information, get in touch with Paul. And Paul, where is the best place for them to reach you at?
Best place to reach me at is LinkedIn. I'm on here pretty much every day, or I also have my website, fcafinancial.com/my name.
Perfect. All right, folks. And that information is in the show notes along with his LinkedIn profile information. So thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you. And remember, be unstoppable in all you do. And we'll see you same time, same channel next week. Bye for now.